Hello BookTube, how's it going? Today, have I got a treat for you, and it's not candy. It's the newest Donald Westlake book. What? What did you say? Donald Westlake book? Hasn't he been dead for like almost 10 years? Yes, he has, sadly. And this is an awesome little bit that we get that we never even knew was there. So, Forever and a Death came out on June 13th of this year. Hard Case Crime put it out. And let me just tell you what it says on the back. Okay, the bond that never was. 2 decades ago, the producers of the James Bond movies hired legendary crime novelist Donald E. Westlake to come up with a story for the next Bond film. The plot Westlake dreamed up, about a Western businessman seeking revenge after being kicked out of Hong Kong when the island was returned to Chinese rule, had all the elements of a classic Bond adventure, but political concerns kept it from being made. Never one to let a good story go to waste, Westlake wrote an original novel based on the premise instead. A novel he never published while he was alive. Now, nearly a decade after Westlake's death, Hard Case Crime is proud to give you that novel in its first publication ever, together with a brand new afterword by one of the movie producers describing the project's genesis and to give fans their first taste of the Westlake scripted Bond that might have been. Now, this book, I'll just say right now, 2 things I'll say. First thing I'll say is I got this from the publisher because I begged and pleaded, and they were really nice. The second thing is I really, really like this book. There are problems with it. For instance, when I started reading this book, I assumed that it was going to be like a James Bond type of story. There was going to be some fucked up thing going on, and then some like secret agent would show up and like save the day or whatever, or try to. That's not what this book is. And I think like the selling point, the Bond that never was, I think that is going to confuse readers a little bit. I mean, it's an interesting as hell like story. In the back, it goes all through how this was almost a James Bond movie, and what Donald Westlake had to do to try to put a story together that the studio would like, kind of thing. But this is not a spy novel. This is a it's actually, because it's Donald Westlake, it is so close to just being a straight up crime novel. And some of the reasons why is because Donald Westlake is really good at writing unlikable characters, and he makes you like those characters in pretty much everything he's done. I mean, even the Richard Stark stuff, like the main antagonist in this is named Richard Curtis, and he has this beautiful character arc, beautiful in the sense of how it was done. He goes from being a guy who's jaded and pissed off and wants revenge on the people who screwed him, but doesn't really want to hurt people or endanger people. But every choice he makes keeps putting him in situations where he has to do something that he's never done before. He has to make contact with people who, like, he would never, like, ask, like, he would never call somebody up and say, hey, I need you to kill this guy for me. Because that's nothing he's ever done before. But by the end of the book, he's, like, ready to, like, decimate an entire town. An island. I'm not going to tell you what it is in case it's a surprise. But basically, this book starts off with Richard Curtis on his ship, the Mallory, I think it is. And him and his crew are conducting an experiment or a test run of this thing that this guy named George Manville has created, that basically takes an island, and if the island itself was made from, like, kind of like a landfill situation where it's not like solid ground, he could set these charges up in the water and have them go off at different intervals, and it would basically turn the land into soup, into mud, and everything on the island would be destroyed. And so they're about to test this on an island that Richard Curtis owns, that's made primarily from landfill. And as they're doing this, the Planet Watch 3 pulls up, and they're like a conservationist group, almost radicalized group that has been going after Richard Curtis on everything he does. And so he's annoyed. They're talking back and forth over the radio, and one of the divers on the Planet Watch ship is named Kim Balder, and she decides that if she jumps in the water and swims towards the island, they would have to call off the detonations because they wouldn't want to hurt somebody, because that'd be really bad publicity and blah, 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 blah. So she dives in without telling anyone she's going to do it. And then it turns out that George Manville, the guy who set everything up for Richard Curtis, can't turn anything off. And so she's there when the explosion, when the detonations go, and presumed dead. The people on the Planet Watch ship are just devastated, and so they leave while Richard Curtis and Manville and a couple other guys take like a little raft or whatever to the island to check on the damage and to see if they can find this chick, which they do. So they take the chick back to the boat. Now, this is where the story starts getting tricky, because it would be good publicity for Richard Curtis if the girl is dead, because then it would get the Planet Watch people in like court legal mumbo jumbo for the next couple years, leaving him alone to do whatever the hell he wants to do. Whereas if she lives, she could say that Richard Curtis blew up an island while I was swimming towards it, and that would be bad for him. So he's basically going around, in not so many words, trying to get people on the boat that he trusts to make sure that when the ship reaches Australia, that she won't be alive. And that's when the people that work for him kind of don't know how to go. Like, they don't know how far in they want to get with Richard Curtis. Now, the problem with this book, because I was expecting a James Bond book, I didn't know who our hero was. I didn't know who the protagonist was. This guy. I didn't know who this guy was until the 25th chapter, which is around page 104, I think. And then I was like, oh, he's the hero. Okay. And I'm not going to say who it is, just in case you want to jump in on that. Because I actually want to know if you're not expecting James Bond or a James Bond type story, if you know who the hero is right away, like within the first few chapters. Another great thing about this book is that Donald Westlake is the master of this, but he writes super short chapters, and from a bunch of different people's perspectives, which I thought was gonna throw me, which I thought was gonna be like really like, oh god, here we go, I don't even know who the hell's talking now. But it wasn't like that at all, because he goes into such detail, but such sparse detail. Like, he'll give a backstory for somebody when it's their point of view that basically is their motivation for doing the things they're going to do in the next couple chapters. There's other characters that show up and all of a sudden the story is being told from their point of view. You have no idea who they are. You don't know why they're important. And then all of a sudden something happens and you're like, oh shit, that's why this guy's important. Now that makes sense. And da 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 da. So it's really neat how he could jump from person to person to person to person, keep it so fresh and so different, and have it be just an exciting, action-packed, compelling story. The faults of this book is that because one of Westlake's strengths is that he writes such good bad guys, his good guys are really boring. If a character's kind of morally gray, they're still really interesting. But as soon as the hero guy becomes the hero guy, he becomes very one-dimensional, and isn't at all interesting. Like, there's almost like no conflict in him anymore. And then there's like almost an entire, because the book's broken up into 4 parts, there's like an entire part of the book where the hero is not even there. And that's kind of weird. The most annoying character in the book is Kim Balder, the diver. And she's basically almost a prop that says annoying things. And I don't mean like she's like, OMG, holy wow. She does stuff like, guys, I'm coming with you no matter what you say. Well, you're not coming with us. I'm going to come whether you like it or not. Okay, fine, come on. Like, shit like that. And it's like, so, ugh. But basically, for like 90% of the book, this girl's only purpose in the book is to be like a damsel in distress. Now, that's fine with me, because almost 100% of what I read is shit like that. Like, it's kind of like an older style of doing stuff. But a lot of the SJW women power stuff might have a problem with that. But at the same time, she does do something in the book that no one else could do, that basically, I'm not going to give it away, but even though for the majority of the book she's like a wooden plank, she does do something that is extraordinary, that is very helpful to the plot. So don't let that stop you, is what I'm saying, because it will get better. Other than that, this book was just amazing. I read most of it in one sitting. I was just burning through it because it was so fast-paced. I love my stuff fast-paced. Like, when I'm reading something, if it's like clicking, like some of the chapters in here are like a page. So it's like this thing flies, and as you're going, it makes you feel like you've read so much more than you already have. It's just a really good book. I highly recommend it. If you want to read a full review of this book. I wrote it on goldmetalfaucet.com. That's my blog. And that's it. So if you do get it, or if you have read it, talk to me down below and let me know what you thought of it. So until next time, everybody.